Okay, so this is the last video for the first set of notes. A short video on the formation of valleys and human influence on the landscape structure. Valleys can be formed through two means, either by a glacier or by a river. Now, a glacier basically in the Earth goes through periods of time called ice ages when the climate drops dramatically, everything cools down, and as a result the snow doesn't melt as easily, and you'll have kind of like arms reaching out from the poles where the snow is deposited and doesn't melt, but as it expands, this snow like structures called glaciers will move forwards and cause friction between the rock and the soil that it's travelling over, and the ice and snow that's moving over the top. That's essentially a wall of ice. Now, this is an extremely strong force behind it, due to the property of the water as it freezes and pushes the ice in front onwards. And there's a lot of friction between the ice and the rock and soil underneath, and it essentially moves away huge amounts of soil and rock, pushing it forwards. Now what happens is, as the climate then changes, these glaciers are going to recede because they'll start to melt away, and they'll leave the soil, the particles that they've moved where they reached. Now behind it there'll be a funnel carved out of the landscape, and that's what a valley is in a lot of cases. A lot of the valleys in Wales are actually formed by glaciers, and you know if they're formed by a glacier because they have an overall U shape. On the other hand, it can be formed by a river, and note as well, a river can actually continue forming a valley at the bottom of a glacier-formed valley. But basically, a valley that's been completely formed by a river isn't going to have this huge carved-out shape. It's going to be more V-shaped, because what's happening is that as the river makes its way along, it's wearing away particles from the ground, washing soil away, washing stone away, and it'll gradually make its way deeper and deeper. But it's not carving out huge amounts at a time. It's wearing away gradually over many years, and as a result then it forms a V shape instead. And you can see the effect that a good effect that a river has by looking at a waterfall. Waterfall is a good example of how the different types of rock and influence the river's erosion and the river's formation of the valley. What's happened at a waterfall is that you've got one strong hard type of rock reaching a softer type of a rock. And as the water runs along it, the softer type is going to then erode faster than the hard type, and a step is created which can get larger and larger depending on at which point the river reaches a harder type of rock underneath. So glaciers, these huge ice structures pushing forwards, create these U-shaped valleys, and rivers, smaller structures constantly wearing away a bit at a time. These will create the V-shaped valleys. Finally, what effect do humans have on landscape formation? Well, I mentioned a bit about pollution, but humans can really influence the actual structure of the landscape. A good example are dams, which this one shows where a valley was flooded in Wales and they actually had to move the village, the picture in the presentation. Or totally the reverse, where a dam is used to drain a valley instead of flooding it. or a river can be diverted. The A465, for example, the dual carriageway main road that runs up the Neath Valley, that was actually, when it was built, diverted the river. They changed the movement of the river. So we can really influence the way then in which it erodes. That valley now floods a lot of times throughout the year because of the way in which the river has been, the way in which its shape has been changed. Deforestation also has a big influence. Trees bind soil together with their roots. So when you remove trees in a large scale, that soil is no longer bound together and will easily get eroded by water. As this picture here, it shows a massive landslide where loads of rock and soil has been washed away in a storm, all because of deforestation and the removal of those roots. With what we call monoculture, where the plant is grown over a wide area, your problem is that it's such large fields are used that there's nothing to stop the wind as it blows along, and the wind can build up very, very fast speeds. Now what's going to happen is, as the wind blows over the soil, it's going to erode the soil, and this can cause very large problems. One thing that can be done, though, is to use windbreakers, which are rows of trees that stop the movement of the wind and hence help to prevent or limit erosion. We can also plant things like hedges, which is essentially doing the same job. So, as you can see, because we have an effect on erosion, and we need to know, what's the natural amount of erosion that should be taking place. Is there our effect that we're having causing damage? We need to be able to monitor erosion, and one of the ways which we can do this is to use pegs. Basically, it's a simple procedure. Hammering a peg into the ground so that the top 6 inches stick out. You mark where the soil is, and then you leave it, and you come back once a month, once every 2 months, and if erosion is taking place on a large scale, then gradually over time what's going to happen is that the peg will be uncovered essentially, and as a result you'll be able to record the rate at which the erosion is taking place.